Welcome to the Lights Lounge, a weekly home for all things Las Vegas Lights FC. We'll be here every single week in 2025. You can join us, as usual, for a deeper dive into everything that happens on the pitch, including match previews and analysis alongside a new guest every single week. A bit of a unique one today. It's currently Friday, July 4th, just ahead of our home match against Sacramento Republic FC. The Lights are riding a 3-match win streak going into that one, but this episode will come out after the match. So instead of specific match analysis and match recaps today, we're going to take a deep dive into the world of scouting. So alongside me today, I have the club's scouting coordinator, Steve De Benedictis. Steve, welcome to the lounge.
Thank you for having me.
It's July 4th. We've got the U.S. in the Gold Cup final on Sunday, so I've got my U.S. jersey on. And of course, to celebrate that, we have a Canadian on the pod. So maybe we should have done this on Canada today.
I mean, I was joking with you earlier. I should have brought my Canada jersey for this.
Yeah, we really should have done that. We should have coordinated that a little bit better. Who's on the back of your Canada jersey? Do you have
I have a Davies jersey.
You have a Davies jersey. Of course you do. Yeah. So, of course, the reason that you're here with us in person today is because you've flown in from Toronto, where you live, and you work remotely for the Lights in your scouting role. You're continuing your presence on the bench as a de facto assistant coach under interim head coach Giovanni Troise because, of course, he was the assistant coach. So just giving him an extra voice on that bench to support us on match days. So we're taking advantage today, since you're here in person, to get you on the pod. But before we dive into the traditional scouting role that you actually have, I want to start with Gio and your role there. So Gio's on a 3-match winning streak at the time of recording. 30,000 foot view. What do you feel like he's doing really well with the squad right now?
I think he's tapping into what we all know is there. He is getting the best out of these players. You look up and down our roster. It's a strong roster. We started the season off on a good note. Kind of fell a little bit back, but even when we were winning, everybody kind of sensed that there was more, especially coming off of our run last year. I think Gio's tapped into the individuals and the players themselves and elevated their game in terms of bringing out passion, bringing out strength, bringing out the community part of the team. And I think that's really, really important, something that we saw was maybe not there as much with the first couple months. Yeah,
I think I've seen that from my view because I'm here week to week and seeing the players week to week in training, and the vibes are incredibly high. Obviously, the vibes are always high when you're winning, but I think Gio's done a really good job of placing the emphasis on returning, for lack of a better word, and at the risk of oversimplifying it, making it fun again. Training is really fun. The guys he's having them compete against each other all the time. They're like trying to win small-sided games, all of that kind of stuff. And you can tell on match day that they're fighting for him and fighting for each other and really starting to unlock some of that attacking potential that I think was missing over the opening part of the season. So let's see. Take us behind the scenes. Yeah, so on a match day, you're sitting on the bench, flying in to help him. What does a match day look like right now under Gio's leadership?
So under Gio, in terms of my perspective, I show up at the stadium a few hours before the match. I speak with him and with Maxi, and we go over our game plan, something that we've gone over a couple of times already in the week. He's trained with the boys all week, and then we look for little things like one of the big events of a pre-match on a match day is going out and seeing the starting lineup that the opponent has. And so it's like, okay, everything stops. Let's really go through this lineup. Is this what we predicted? Where are they going to use these players? How are they going to play? How are they? All the things that we can gather from that lineup, we now implement or pivot based on that. So we've got that. With that, then we formulate any new plans or we cement any old plans, and then then it's all up to the pregame team talk, and that's where Gio gets a chance to go into the locker room, gathers all the boys around, and he makes any final adjustments, and he pumps them up, and we go out there and do what we do. So that's pregame. We get out there. We're always studying. Something about Gio is that he's got an incredible attention to detail. And so, he's telling me to watch this, watch that, little things here and there. I'm not going to be too specific because I don't want to.
Sure.
But we're always watching everything at all times. And so we go out there, we're watching warm-ups, we're looking for anything that we can use. We go out there for
I was going to ask that. I'm always curious because I'm watching warm-ups as well, and a lot of times teams will put their back line in formation and they'll pass around. Have you ever seen like teams really try to hide things, or do you try to hide things like, we don't think that they're sure whether we're going to play a back 3 or a back 4, so we're going to warm up in a weird way to try to mislead them? Is that part of the game, or are people just kind of like, once we get to warm-ups, we're just rolling at that point?
I don't know.
Yeah.
It could be something that teams do actively. It could also be just the fact that they don't really look into things like that. Mm-hmm. I think the easiest way to figure out how a team's going to play against you is to take a look at the starting 11, right? Unless they have players who can double as a right center back and a right back, mm-hmm. or if they're playing a double pivot or a single pivot with guys who can change, I think it's, in some cases, it's pretty obvious. Right. If the 3 center backs that usually play the last 3 games are in the lineup, even if they're in the wrong positions, I mean, I think we can safely assume where they're going to be playing, right?
Yeah, for us it's a little different because we do have a player like Budati has been playing as the right-sided center back, but he could play as a true right back, and so maybe it's a little bit more challenging to evaluate how we're going to line up. So,
right.
Yeah, interesting. So in match, you're sitting there looking, and you see this all the time on TV. Head coach walks back over to the bench and is angrily discussing something with his assistant coaches. What do those discussions in the heat of the match look like with Gio and with Maxi, the goalkeeper coach, and anyone else on the bench?
Usually it has to do with either something that went wrong, maybe a call didn't go our way. Gio's animated, Maxi's animated, I'm animated, and we're trying to figure out what to do with what just happened. Mm-hmm. One of the things that I do have is I have an iPad where I'm able to watch the widescreen basic stream of the game. Yeah. And so with that wide stream, I get a chance to take a look at things tactically, take a look at the broader picture and see, okay, how high or how low are they playing? Because you can see the near flank very well on the touchline. You just don't know, and you can't really tell how big or how wide that the space is between that touchline and the one across from you. Yeah. And it's something that unless you're in the middle of the pitch, unless you're a goaltender, unless you're a center midfielder, you're probably not going to be able to appreciate those spaces. So I'm on that iPad. I'm taking a look at that. Mm-hmm. I'm also watching the game because it's happening right in front of me. Yeah. And when a coach comes over, whether it be Gio or Maxi, mm-hmm. and we're talking, we're saying, okay. Was he offside? Was he not offside? Was that a call? Was that not a call? Things like that.
Yeah, because I know different coaching staffs will operate differently. It depends on how many you have on staff, but some will put a coach actually up in a press box or in a broadcast booth, and they'll have them on AirPods with one of the assistant coach channeling that stuff. Others will just use the stream as you guys do with the iPad, but I think that's a pretty critical part of the data that an assistant coach can give to a head coach to make intelligent decisions that isn't immediately obvious to fans watching on TV or even watching in the stadium.
To that point, if I'm not in person, that's exactly what I'm doing. I'm 5,000 miles away doing it, but I'm watching the broadcast. I've also got access to the widescreen at home as well, and so I'm watching and I'm taking notes. Mm-hmm. Another thing I'm on the bench doing is I'm taking notes. Any little thing that I see, I'll tell Gio and I'll also make note of it. Yeah. Right as soon as that halftime whistle, is blown, or if it's critical, I'll talk to him in game. Yeah. Then it's like, okay, I see this, I see this, I see this, and if I'm at home, I'm sending him a text message. I'm giving him a call. Hey, this is what I see. Yeah. And he usually acknowledges that, and then they make adjustments for the second half.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm curious, as you kind of reach that second half, right, going into halftime, I assume as you're walking into halftime, there's a discussion with Gio. Okay, what do we need to change? Are we going to make any substitutions? Yep. What's the message to the boys? And then Gio delivers that, and then it's right back out. Are you having individual conversations with players at halftime? Take me inside the locker room.
Yeah, I think if you can pull a player aside, you do so, and you let them know, hey, listen, there's this, there's that, look for this, whatever the situation may be. But you're definitely getting your message across to the team via Gio, obviously. Yeah. And then after that second half and the end part of that halftime period, you're talking about subs. What do we do if this happens? What do we do if that happens? Do we want to sit? Do we want to push? All these things. Yeah. Change to 2-striker scenario. Keep one. Drop. Put, like all these things where we're talking, especially on the bench too in the second half.
Yeah. With substitution patterns, on a percentage basis, would you say it's 80% tactical versus like, okay, so-and-so in midfield, Patrick Leao's looking pretty fatigued. Maybe the high-performance tracking data has him at a really high number of high-speed sprints. Does that come into the math on choosing which winger you're going to take off or which central midfielder you might take off?
100%.
Yeah.
100%. We're looking at all the data we possibly can, whether it be the tracking data, whether it be the eye test, whether it be pre-match determinations of minutes, right? We know that some guys are coming in off of injuries. They maybe have 60 minutes. They have 75 minutes. Yeah. These are all things that we kind of work in. And I would say every game is different, but we would look at, let's say we know we have 3 guys on limits.
Yeah.
We then have those subs pretty much planned out.
Yeah.
And then we have, let's say, 2 that aren't. And we're just feeling the game.
Yeah.
And going from there. And Gio obviously makes the call and we go with that.
Does it ever make you nervous when you use up your final substitution in the 80th minute and you're like, man, I hope someone doesn't get injured right now or get sent off or anything like that?
Yes.
Like, that's got to be part of the math, right? Like, do we keep this final substitution in our back pocket for as long as possible, or are we going to gamble and try to change the game with this substitution right now in the 80th minute, even though it might leave us slightly vulnerable?
So that is an added layer to the windows now that we have, right? Because you only have the 3 windows plus the halftime window, where sometimes you're like, okay, do I use it now? Do I burn it? Like, do I burn 3 windows but not 5 subs? Like, there's a whole bunch of things going on.
Yeah, for clarity there, you've got 5 substitutions available to you, but you can only make them in 3 windows.
Yes.
But if you make a sub at halftime, that doesn't count against one of your windows. So you can't make 5 individual substitutions. You might have to group 2 together because of those windows. So
yeah, it's a little nerve-wracking when you're grouping that last window with two players and it's the 80th minute. Which is actually a funny story if you want to go into that a little later on when we talk about my past. I do have an interesting story about that.
Okay, we'll circle back. We'll put a pin on that. I want to talk a little bit about specifically some of the games you've been a part of. So you were on the bench for the Monterey Bay win, 2-0, and then the Indy 11 away win, 1-0. You weren't here for Spokane in the Jägermeister Cup, but you're back today. Of those 3 wins, 3 shutouts, by the way, 2-0, 1-0, 2-0, which one do you think says something important about where the squad is at right now, or which one do you think was the most important win?
I think they all do.
Sure.
Each one of them was a battle, and we came out on the right end of that. I think that first game against Monterey Bay was a statement game, because I don't know if game 2 and game 3 end up following up if game 1 doesn't go the way that it did.
Yeah.
Just the sheer elation from our guys when Johnny put in that first goal.
Yeah.
Right? It was just pandemonium. The stadium erupted, the bench erupted. It was just a massive weight off of everybody's shoulders. And now we can kind of go into, what we thought we could do. That second one seals it.
Yeah. And
now we're feeling good about ourselves. We roll into Indy. We come up against a really strong, tough team, right? They're a bunch of men. They're big boys. That
is a hard. We were talking about this with some of the last podcast guests, but with Nate specifically, that is a difficult place to play. I mean, that is a bunch of 30-plus-year-olds that have 100 appearances in the league. It's artificial turf. It's humid. You've flown all the way across the country, and they just put the ball straight down your throat and win first balls, win second balls, and they make the game so ugly. They're brutally effective, I think, is how you would describe them, and that's a hard place to go win. Regardless of like how informed they are or whatever it is, it's a difficult place to win games. So
and so I think, the cop-out answer is, again, all 3 are important, but that was also a massive win.
It's a classic coach answer from you there, by the way. All the games are important.
Of course.
They are, but yeah, it's funny.
But that I don't know if that happens if we don't win the way we did against Monterey Bay.
Yeah. Yeah, you have to get that momentum, especially, the context being the team had lost 5 matches in a row, and once you get on runs like that, the belief, you have to take advantage of the new coach bump at that point, and then you can start rolling. And I think it also, when you make a coaching change like that, it puts the pressure a little bit back on the players, because it's like, okay, we've made the coaching change. If things continue to not go well, guess who we're asking questions of next?
Right.
And it maybe just put lights of fire underneath the players. Not that the players aren't going 100% and always fighting for everything, because I think they are, but it does just give maybe that little 1% bump that you need to put yourself over the edge.
To that point, I think they also see the opportunity. Right?
Yeah.
new coach, new opportunity. Maybe somebody who wasn't playing as much now gets an opportunity to play a little bit more.
We talked about that with Nate.
Yep.
Nate was a little bit on the outside looking in towards the end of Antonio's tenure, and Gio stuck him straight back in the lineup. It's a big opportunity for him to show he can play at the level. So
absolutely.
Yeah. That Indy game, let's talk a little bit more about that, because obviously that 90th minute game winner connection between Steph and Knight puts in the back of the net. Just from the bench, walk me through your experience of like watching that counter and the emotions of seeing it hit the back of the net.
I mean, it's hard to describe.
Yeah.
It's hard to describe. It was just, again, like as soon as that ball falls on Knight's foot, you know what Knight can do.
Yeah.
Right? It happened, and it kind of just went blank. I don't know exactly. Like there was a group of people rushing Knight in the corner.
Yeah.
Everybody just kind of bolted, and I'm in the middle of a hug with the coaches and trainers, and it was just wild.
I think we asked Gio recently in one of his media availability interviews, and he was like, yeah, honestly, I don't remember. I just blacked out, and then I was in the middle of the field, and I didn't know how I got there.
Yeah, absolutely. That's accurate.
Yeah.
100% accurate.
Amazing stuff. How satisfying, too, as a coaching staff on the side of the field. You've made aggressive substitutions. Yep. You've taken Johnny off the field. You've put Steph and Knight in as a strike partnership, changed the formation to go for the win, and then you get your two attacking substitutions, Steph, Knight, connect for a 90th minute game winner. Once the emotion subsides, that's got to be really satisfying to go, we pushed the right buttons, and then the players delivered on it.
And I think not only does that feel good for the coaching staff, it also feels good for the players, because now there's a trust element. Like, hey, trust the coaches, trust the staff, right? They managed to orchestrate this. It worked out.
Yeah.
Let's see what else they'll tell us to do and how we go from there. And it came down to, I remember watching. It was about in the, I would say the 35th minute or so, where I'm just looking around at Indy and they're gassed. Their defense was gassed.
Yeah.
They made a bunch of changes. They went for it. But that still gave us an opportunity with our fresh legs to still take advantage of maybe some tired legs. I mean, they're again, big-bodied. They're a little bit older.
Yeah.
The heat, which I'm not sure if they're totally used to, but this is Las Vegas.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, we're complaining about maybe the humidity, but the temperature, we know what to do in the temperature.
100%.
And so there's an opportunity here. There's a window here. And I remember speaking with Giovanni the first game where he's like, let's go attack.
Yeah.
Okay, Giovanni, let's go attack, right? Let's live up to the, to what we want to do here, and let's go for it.
Right. Yeah, let's release those wing backs. Let them get high. Let the center backs defend on an island. Let's go for it.
And Giovanni was 100. Like he was like, I like it. Yeah. Let's go and let's do that.
Yeah.
And so
we've talked with a couple of players about that too, and part of that too is trusting guys, not just the attackers, but when you go and play like that, that's telling Elias, Nate Jones, hey, you're going to be on an island against this experienced striker. We trust you to deal with that. Like, Nate, if there's a winger running into the channel and you've got to chase him down 1v1, we're trusting you to deal with that problem. That's what we pay you to do.
Yep.
And he's like, that's what I want to be doing.
Yep.
They were both on the pod, like, I love defending, right? And so you're trusting them in maybe a one-on-one scenario to deal with the problem. And so far they have. They've been 3 shutouts in a row. So
And to that point, Yunus Boudadi adds an unbelievable element of experience to that back line. Indy makes a sub. Right, they bring in right winger.
The really, really pacey guy.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh my gosh,
I can't remember the name off the top. It'll hit us in 5 minutes.
Yeah,
probably,
it'll hit us in 5 minutes. They bring him in, and Malik, isn't it? Malik.
Keep going. I'll find it.
They bring in Malik, and he is a very dynamic player. I've scouted him before.
Yep.
I've looked at him in depth, not in depth enough to know his name, but
Malik Foster.
Malik Foster, thank you.
You had it right.
Yeah. Okay. Malik Foster, obviously, we know what he can do.
Yeah.
And I remember it was a water break, and Eunice is there, and it looks like Eunice is going to be drawing up against Foster. For whatever reason, Foster has free reign, right? As he should. He's a very talented player, and he seems to be playing on the left side, which is where Eunice is going to be defending him. And so it was so refreshing to just be like, hey, Eunice, like, Malik Foster, like, he's like, played against him a bunch of times. I know what to expect. Perfect.
Yeah.
Awesome. Right. And that's that experience kicking in. And so with a guy like Eunice out there, Elias and Jones are fantastic at defending. Now you've got a guy who can help mentor them on the pitch in the moment. And it's another level that I think maybe it doesn't get noticed enough. But
it's partially that experience in the league specifically. We talk about that a lot in any league, but Eunice, for example, there's experience, and then there's experience against these players that you see. It's like, I've played against Malik Foster 5 times. I've got it. No worries. I've prepped for him so many times. I know what he likes to do. I know he prefers this foot. I know he likes to get to the byline, whatever it is. And you could be an experienced 30-year-old defender with 100 appearances in the championship, but you won't know who Malik Foster and his preferences and tendencies. So having that balance as you build a roster of league experience, overall experience, young players, it all makes a difference on match day in those little moments like that. The final thing I have from that Indy 11 win, which I found really interesting, was that obviously we started that game in a back 3, and then we shift to a back 4, go 2 strikers up top, really go for the game before Indy does. Obviously Indy made a couple substitutions like the Malik sub, but we made that sub, and immediately flurry of activity on the Indy sideline. They made a sub to match the same thing. They brought out their central center back, the guy from UNC Charlotte. What's his name? Hogan.
Yep.
Hogan comes out,
yep.
and they put another midfielder on, and they match the formation. And that said a lot to me about Gio's aggression and wanting to win a game. Is away from home against a difficult team to play against in the humidity on artificial turf. The Lights made the attacking substitution that dictated how they played, which I found really interesting.
Where a draw probably is a good result.
Yeah, if we walked away there with a 0-0 draw, we would have all been very, very happy.
Yep.
Yeah, that's a good result in this league, especially cross conference, going across this country. But again, I'd rather just go win the game.
I think that's a little bit of the Gio effect.
Yeah.
Right. I think he's. He's young and he wants to go and get it. Mm-hmm. And I think that was a great example of doing it.
Yeah. Okay, so let's move on from the game stuff and let's talk a little bit about what your normal role with the Lights is.
Yep.
Normally you're not on the bench providing in-match input. You are at home kind of doing some of that stuff that you talked about, but your title is scouting coordinator. First off, just tell me prior to the coaching change on a normal rhythm what your role with the Lights is. So
basically, I am a first-team scout looking for players. That is probably half. That's half of it. Yeah. The other half is tactical analysis. And so I kind of wear both hats. Love doing both of them. And so in the first-team scout, it's basically you're going out and you're either seeking talent or talent is being presented to you, and you're just filtering through it. I don't know how many players I've watched in depth. I've got to think it's about 500 at least at this point.
Yeah.
One of the interesting things from a scouting perspective to the final roster is that I was talking to Sporting Director John and just saying, like, what is it about? I watch about 10 guys for every one player we might sign, and he's like, that's probably what it is. And so for every player that's there's a laundry list of players who have gone through the vetting process, and we end up with what we got.
Talk to me about what that vetting process looks like. That's a lot of time on Y-Scout,
I
assume.
Yeah, that's Y-Scout.
Yeah, which is a platform where you can just basically pull up any game and watch any game and just watch full games, clipped out highlights. So let's say a player comes across the desk. I guess first, before you're evaluating a player, how are we finding the players that of those 10 guys that you're watching? How do those 10 become the ones that, we're going to spend time on these 10 guys?
Great question. So first and foremost, I would say they're coming from agents. So agents are pitching players to you. One of the things that I learned early in this process was that you can go out and scout a million players in the world. There are just tons and tons and tons of players. The likelihood of that player wanting to come overseas, likely to the States, to Las Vegas, every little difference is more likely that they're not going to come.
Right.
And so every little step. And so kind of going and searching, like I've watched some players like in the Vietnam League. And it's like, okay, well,
Yeah, what's the likelihood?
There's got to be a better way, an easier way of kind of streamlining this.
Yeah.
And so fortunately, agents like to pitch players, and they'll pitch players directly to me. They'll pitch them to John.
Yeah.
They'll pitch them to Jose. And so we have a group chat that just constantly gets filled with player profiles that, I make a list, watch them, report on them, send it back to them, and then where do we go from here? When it comes to looking at a player, the first thing is get info on them. Where are they from? Because we have a limited amount of international spots.
Right.
Where do they play? How old are they? Were they playing regular minutes? Were they playing sub minutes? What position do they play? Left-footed, right-footed, all of the biometric kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Once we get through that, then it's like, okay, they've passed, that test. Now let's actually go out and watch them. And we go and watch a certain number of games.
Yeah.
And you're looking for a plethora of things depending on the position.
Yeah.
And so I generally tend to follow a pretty similar profile in terms of, okay, look at this, look at this, look at this, look at that. And then I come up with an overall analysis. And then it's like, okay, John, here's what I think. Feel free to take a look yourself. I don't like, possible, impossible, all these sorts of things, and then he's a wizard when it comes to signing these guys. I mean, I don't know how he does it, but if I go to him and I say, hey, Johnny, I really like this guy, somehow he shows up a week later.
Yeah.
The guy's a magician. He's unbelievable when it comes to contract negotiations. So
yeah, which is a whole different world. Are you filtering out players during that process as well? Like filtering players out so that John's not wasting his time on a player that you're like, okay, if he hasn't hit 3 out of 4 metrics or whatever it is, okay, filter him out. We don't even need to go to John with this one. So by the time it filters up to John, it's more like this is a realistic player that we should look at whether it's possible to get him.
100%. And if we have a backlog at that position, we just put them on a
file them away.
But hey, we revisit if we need.
Yeah.
But otherwise, not much room right now on the squad.
Got you.
So we have our lists of players. We have our depth chart. We have our wish list.
Yeah.
As every organization does.
Yeah, fascinating. How does being remote affect all of this? Because you're not here in person, which would be a dream, obviously, because then you could just walk down to John's office and
100%.
talk shop all day. So are you guys texting and emailing mostly? Are you getting on weekly calls, daily calls? What does that look like?
I would say with John, it's probably a daily call.
Yeah.
It's a daily call, checking in for not just players, not just strategy, but just in general. Training sessions, how do they go? What's the vibe like? Is anybody injured? Anybody coming back? What are we looking like in terms of starting lineup? All of these little things, right? And then is there any interest on any players? Do we have to prepare for bringing and replacing somebody? These are the types of things that we speak, I would say daily.
Yeah.
And then we have larger meetings with ownership, with Jose. We'll have about a meeting, I would say once a month or two, in terms of where we're at with our roster, where we want to be, how we're going to get there.
Yeah. I'm curious because it's basically you and John are a two-man show, right? So there's a push and pull to just a two-person relationship. What is that relationship like in talking about players, evaluating our current players, all of that kind of stuff? How does your guys' personal relationship come into that dynamic?
I think we see the game very similarly. It's incredible how we share quite similar opinions on quite a few players, and it really is like an amazing relationship that I think we just feed really well off of each other.
Yeah.
If I don't like someone, and these are the reasons why, John was like, yeah, I see that. Right? If Johnny's saying, hey, this guy's available, I like him, chances are he's probably pretty good and I'm going to like him too.
Right.
We very, very rarely differ from what we see. There might be, hey, I think this guy should play in this position, or we could use this guy in that position. Well, I don't really see it. We'll have our, we'll disagree as we should on some
right,
things.
as should be healthy, right? Like you do need a certain level of disagreement and pushback to keep yourself accountable.
100%.
Right.
But I think there's a trust level there that it's easy to work with somebody you trust.
Yeah.
And I think the success that he's had, I think it speaks for itself.
Yeah. That was kind of my next question, and maybe it's a moot point, but I was going to ask what happens when you two disagree. Like, what if it's like, you're like, hey, I really like this player, and John goes and watches him and goes, I don't see the same thing, or I have big concerns about this. What does that discussion then become if there's like two differing opinions? How do you reach a middle ground?
I think, ultimately he has the final say.
Yeah.
Right? And so if he doesn't like somebody, so be it. Like, okay, what don't you like? And another thing that in the position that I'm in, I'm learning from John, right? And so, okay, why don't you like him? I'm going to memory hold that, so then I now know how to filter this out for the future. But if there's a disagreement, we talk about it.
Yeah.
I think that's the healthiest thing to do with a relationship when you're in disagreement.
Right.
Just talk about it.
Yeah.
Right? We can, we can have a discussion, pros and cons, what you like, what you don't like, and we come to some sort of an agreement. And again, he's got the final say, and I respect that decision.
Yeah. In this sort of scouting process for maybe a player that's currently on the roster, do you have a process that you look back on and go, man, that was so interesting? Or your favorite scouting process? Maybe it took forever to get someone across the line, or it was an interesting way of finding a player. I don't know. Do you have a good story?
I think one of the more recent ones has to be with Johnny Rodriguez. He was on our radar last year. That's just somebody where both of us in agreement were like, yeah, if he ever becomes available, if he's a free agent, we gotta try.
Yeah.
To hear that he was made available and that we were close was just exciting, right? And the fact that we managed to land him from Oakland, I think that's. There's not much of a story other than we were on him for a while. But another one would have been with Elias. So. Last year's team, I don't know if we're going to talk about last year's team a little bit, but
yeah, we will in a little bit. But yeah, go ahead.
Last year's team, from my opinion, we lacked a tough as nails, big, strong, aerial center back that we could use, whether it be off the bench, because Malik was playing really well. Yeah. So was Joe Hafferty. But we lacked something, right? If one of them went down, we were in trouble.
Yeah.
Especially in the later end of the year, right? Hemmer was injured.
Yeah.
I don't think Fabian was with us anymore.
He wasn't, no.
So that was a move where I think the story was that I think he reached out to John on a social media platform.
He DM'd him. He
right?
DM'd him on Instagram.
Right.
Yeah.
So he says, hey, Steve, watch this guy. I think you might like him.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh my gosh, this guy, yes.
Yeah, I like him.
I like him. I love him.
Where's this unicorn been?
Right?
Yeah.
Like, he's playing in Denmark. He's playing in a lower division in Denmark. I don't care. We need to get this guy in, and we need to get him in ASAP.
Yeah.
I think he's really going to make a difference, and truthfully, I think he has made a difference. I think maybe we didn't use him as much as we should have last year. But again, he's new to the team, new to the league. He's got to learn. Yeah. Fair enough.
Yep.
I think we see that paying off dividends right now.
Yeah, and having someone during that playoff run last year, having a player like Elias to be able to come off the bench, one, as cover for if Hafferty or Howell had to come off, and Howell was dealing with a bit of a hamstring issue at the time and kind of managing his minutes, or just going to a back three and protecting a lead. I mean, we saw the U.S. do that in the semifinals last night. Walker Zimmerman, he's on the team for the Gold Cup to go in there and win some headers and play in the middle of a back three and get you a result in a knockout game. And I think Elias did that really effectively for us down the stretch last year, and then has really stepped into his own this year as someone that is just inked in pen in the starting lineup. A young guy, but become like a real lead by example type of guy. So a good find there. I think I'm curious a little bit more on the Johnny process and what it looks like for you scouting players within the league itself, because obviously you're always, we'll talk about that in just a second, how you do some of our match analysis and prep for the coaches and that kind of stuff. So you're watching a lot of games in this league. There's probably a little bit more of wishful thinking in the scouting in the league, because it's just, like you mentioned earlier, the more degrees of separation there are, the less likely it is a player to come. Someone like Johnny that's already in the league, that's already here, he could come available in a week, and you need to be ready to move on him. So are you kind of constantly evaluating, even if someone's under contract for 2 or 3 more years, hey, this is the list of guys across the league that we really like, and if we get a call from that GM that, hey, we're maybe looking to move them, we're trying to free up an international slot, do you sort of have a list prepared for those guys? Yeah,
so there is a list of those guys. I mean, when you're watching the game as a scout, you're always picking up on little things, right? I mean, you're looking for players that impress you. You're looking for, moments. You're looking for consistency. And so one of the things that in the match analysis that actually doubles back into the player identification is the fact that I have a list of players to watch, per team.
Yeah.
In order to come up with a list of players to watch, I have to watch the team, and I have to find players that are dangerous.
Right.
I also have a list of players and team and systems that we can expose. Again, you got to watch the games in order to figure that out. And so when there are guys who are on my players to watch that are now, the rumors are, oh, this guy could be coming available, which, oh, by the way, Johnny Rodriguez was a massive star beside his name. Watch this player when we played against them last year.
And he killed us as well.
He did.
Maybe we didn't watch him as well as we could have because he scored 2 goals in that game, that final regular season game. But anyways, against us last year. So
he was in the report. When a player like that becomes available, and you're like, okay, this is a guy that I've seen so much of in the league, seeing what he can do. I want him. And then from that point, then you go and you do a deeper dive.
Yeah.
Right. And then you look at a player in terms of not only their skill, because you've seen bits and pieces of their skill. You want to see their whole game, right? You focus on them. Okay, yeah, they can put the ball in, but how are they off the ball? Are they making runs? Are they making movements? Are they good in hold-up play? Are they good in one-on-one duels? Are they tall? Are they big? Are they strong? Are they technical? Are they, good with their feet?
What's their body language like? How do they react when they haven't scored in 5 games? Those kinds of things.
Yep, 100%. And then you look at the person themselves, right? If you check the box of, hey, they're skilled enough. Now we look at the person and we figure out, okay, what type of personality is this person? We want to make sure we're bringing in good quality individuals into the team, and not bringing in somebody who's going to be at odds with coaches, at odds with other players, and be a problem in the clubhouse or in the locker room.
Is that a relationship-driven thing? Are you picking up the phone and calling people across the league and figuring out who they know, I know a coach that he played for 3 years ago. Let me do a little personality check on the background.
100%. Talking to players. Talking to players in the league, right? We have players on our team right now who have played at different clubs.
Sure.
And so you talk to them, you ask them, maybe you call, Johnny would be the guy to ask about this, but he'll call other sporting directors. Say, hey, what do you got on this guy? He's not going to talk to the sporting director that he's making the move with.
Sure. Yeah.
Right? Obviously, they're going to say that he's fantastic.
He's
great.
The best guy on our team.
100%. He's going to go and call. He's got a few trusted people who he can rely on. And he knows a lot of people in this league, and he can make those connections and say, okay, what do you think? Do a little bit of a character analysis.
Yeah.
And so we go with that.
Fascinating. To wrap up, so sort of the scouting discussion here, I want to rewind to 2024 quickly because it's obviously such a fascinating story, and we haven't really been able to talk to you about your experience with 2024. So John comes on board very late after Jose Bautista buys the team in January 2024. There are 0 players. John gets hired, and then you get hired. So first, what was did John just pick up the call and was like, we need to build a roster right now. Do you want the job?
You know what? I'm not going to lie to you. I think it starts even before that. He gives me a call. I want to say it was the second call he made when he got the offer.
Yeah.
It might have been the first. Probably his family would have been the first, but I might have been the first.
Yeah, maybe.
He calls and says, "Hey, Steve,
panic call.
Yeah. What do I do? There's this offer here. There's no players on the roster. There's an opportunity here. What do I do?" And that's a testament to the fact that we have a really good working relationship, good professional relationship. We've worked with each other for many, many years, and it's just one of those things where, like, Johnny, I think you should seriously consider this.
Yeah.
He's like, right? But what about the roster? What about how are we going to do this? We'll figure it out.
Yeah.
Right? We'll figure it out. And so from that moment, I remember on the phone with him saying, okay, what do you need me to do? You know what? I'm just going to start doing things.
Yeah.
Okay? I'm just going to start doing stuff. And you let me know what you need done, and it'll get done.
Yeah.
And it just kind of worked like that. And so we basically went through the build, which, if you want me to elaborate on that.
Yeah, I mean, let's talk about what that looked like. I mean, because you have no players, and you've got, a month, maybe a month and a half if you started early enough in January to get a day one roster put together. And it's not like, we just need to get it by them. We also need to do preseason.
Yes.
We got to get a coach in place. What kind of players does the potential coach want? All of that kind of stuff. So maybe just talk through that from a 30,000 foot view.
So it was a whirlwind.
Yeah.
A whirlwind couple weeks. I will say that one of the things that maybe benefited us, although it was a crazy scenario and we had nobody on our roster and, there was nothing, it was a fresh start.
Yeah.
And it was public a lot of players and a lot of agents knew that we had nobody on our roster. And so I can speak to the fact that a lot of agents, a lot of players, there was a lot of interest in our team, in our squad, because, hey, here's an opportunity for maybe somebody who is a free agent, maybe somebody who didn't play a lot last year, somebody who wants to make the next step. So John was just flooded with all sorts of players. And so, he's just, sending me player after player after player, and I'm on Y-Scout, just player after, just check X, check X. And one of the things that I guess is both a blessing and a curse when you have no players is that you need players. You can't be overly selective, right? You go and you sign. Oh, you know what? He's not bad. We need a center mid. We need a center back. Okay, let's go. Right? We can evaluate this thing as it goes.
Yeah.
But we need to put something in place because in a few weeks from now, we've got our first preseason game. Right now, we have no players.
Yeah, it's not even like there's an academy in place. It's like, we'll throw the U18s out there. Like, no, there was literally no one.
No.
So.
And a lot of the players who were on the team the year before with Las Vegas, they had already signed, or they were already talking to other teams, and they were finding their ways to outside of Vegas because they didn't know what the scenario was going to be.
Right. And they're not sticking around to wait. Yeah.
Right.
Fascinating. So you get the roster in place. And, I mean, really, a couple players weren't available for that first game. I think barely made an 18. Maybe there were only 17 players on that first match day roster. You get it together, and then it does come together. At what point did you, in that season, did you feel like we've built a good roster here? Because, I mean, that many players, that many new things, you're not being super selective. You're like, this could go poorly. This could go really well. At what point in that season did you go, no, we've built a good roster that can compete?
I would say once we got our first win, I believe it was against Oakland.
Yeah.
Once we went into Oakland. Was it Oakland? No.
I think so.
No, I know the pivotal game for me was Oakland. We went to Oakland. We won there. I think it was 3-1.
Okay.
And we realized, okay, we can win.
Yeah.
Okay, we can win. So this roster is something. We go along with that, and we string a couple results here and there. Okay, we're always figuring out who our starting 11 is going to be, right? I mean, we're always tinkering. We're always figuring out, okay, what are we going to look like? Who's on the bench? Who's going to be starting? Who's going to be part of this in 2 months from now?
Yeah.
Right, because we had some players on the monthly contract, right? We had players who were on loan, and that's another point that I want to make is that when you have no roster and an MLS team is looking to ship off a player to a USL team to get minutes, a team with no roster is a very good spot to land a player.
Right.
And so, Johnny's getting calls from all sorts of MLS teams saying, hey, we'll give you this guy for, pennies on the dollar for paying their salary. We'll give you this guy on a free loan. We'll give you all of these players because they know that we need to fill a roster.
Yeah.
And so we got some really good loan players out of that.
Yeah, because let's talk about that. Let's talk about the summer. That was a 3-0 win at Oakland, by the way, on March 30th. Yeah. So that's a big road win that shows like, oh yeah, we can do this. So going into the summer, obviously the summer is always sort of a time where you go, okay, let's go fill the roster holes we feel like we have. We've already made one move this year, bringing in Stefan Stojanovic, who's already had a great impact. And you just look at your roster and you go, okay, we've seen 12 games from the team. What do we need? What are the one or two players that can put us over the edge? Last summer, that was Ousmane Jabang coming in from Montreal on loan, JC Ngando coming in from Vancouver on loan, and Grayson Duty coming in from also Montreal on loan. Those are three very successful loan players. JC Ngando's one of the best players on one of the best teams in MLS right now. So he's taken a massive step forward and was a second team, all-team. And Ousmane Jabang's doing really well at New Mexico United now. Grayson Duty was at Orange County, but tore his ACL, I believe. So that's a tough one. But that's three really successful loan transfers that come in the summer and plug holes, plus Elias sort of towards the end of that window. So take me through the evaluation of the roster in summer and why those players were the right fits to put us over the edge into a playoff team.
I think we, again, just analyzing the games and how we were playing. JC was there from the get-go. He really held it together for us in those early days when we were kind of a...
Yeah, sorry, I forgot he was an early loanee. He wasn't one of the summer additions, but yeah.
But Usman was a guy that, he is the Swiss Army knife. I mean, he has been deployed in, I think, almost every position except for goalkeeper. And that's something that you pick up on when you're scouting. You're like, okay, well, this guy can play everywhere. Check.
Yeah, we'll find a way to use him.
Yeah. And then, he's actually a really good player. Excellent.
Yeah.
Can we land this guy? And sure enough, we end up landing him. And of course, he splits time between playing as a 6 and he's playing as a center back. Yeah. Right? 2 positions that last year we needed to bolster going into that playoff run. Grayson Duty, we needed help with Samake going down, getting injured. Yeah. We were short a left back. A guy like Grayson Duty, although typically not a pure left back, gives us a little bit of backup at that position where he did play a few games. And I remember, I think it was the Detroit game, where he ends up on the left back putting in a beautiful ball and we end up scoring to tie that game up 1-1.
Yeah.
And so
he got the game-winning goal in that crazy game away at Phoenix as well. When JC scored the free kick and then he whipped in a cross that bounced over the keeper and won it. He had just come on like 5 minutes. Time. Yeah, both of them in injury time. That was an insane game. Yeah. But that was both loanees relevant to this conversation with those goal contributions. So
100%.
Yeah. Crazy. And I think that's a way that in this league specifically, some of those MLS loans, that you can go get a guy that you would otherwise not be able to get to the USL Championship because they do still have a potential future in MLS. And guys are very hesitant, I think, to sign a permanent contract in USL Championship, hesitant of getting stuck and not being able to make it back to MLS, I think. And so sometimes those loans are an easier way to get one of those guys of that talent level to elevate your roster. So
I would agree. And a guy like Nate Jones is the perfect example of that, right? Is he in Colorado's immediate plans? Probably not if they loaned him out. But he's getting meaningful minutes against adults. This is an MLS Next Pro, right? And so there is this, I think we can survive in this part of the ecosystem in the American soccer pyramid, where, we're a little bit more older, a little more tougher than MLS Next Pro, but we're not quite MLS in terms of the level, obviously.
Yeah, as Nate Jones developing as a young center back, you don't get games like the Indy 11 away game in MLS Next Pro. You just don't.
Right.
And that's invaluable for a guy like Nate's development. So
I think another important piece to talk about for that is the fact that some guys are making the choice to play in the USL over the MLS because they're afraid of getting stuck in Next Pro.
Yeah. Definitely.
Right. And another thing that we have the blessing of the USL is that, the rights that they still own. It's very much more like a European league where they're still free to, move to other teams.
Yeah.
I mean, the fact that we were able to transfer Schaff Brewer to Malta.
Yeah.
Right? Like, without having to jump through all the clerical, bureaucratic hoops that you have to do with the MLS in terms of, who owns the players, the league, et cetera, et cetera. I think there is an attractiveness to players who might not see themselves being a part of the MLS immediately, where we've seen many transfers from the USL to the MLS too.
Definitely.
Right. And so, hey, let me go get...
Diego Luna is a great example right now. He's a major part of the conversation. He's looking like he's making a great argument to be part of the U.S. World Cup squad with his performances of the Gold Cup.
Yep.
He started as a 16-year-old at El Paso Locomotive and makes a big transfer to MLS, and he's ripping the league to shreds. So the pathway is there.
100%. And we're open to Europe.
Exactly. Markanich from Battery is the prime example of that in recent memory.
Yep.
So, yeah. Okay, let's move forward into just a little bit on the match analysis and match prep that you're doing. Just walk me through what your weekly process is as you're arming the coaching staff with some tactical analysis of the upcoming game and just giving them more data to work with in the build up to a match.
So I would say that my job for, let's say, a specific match, let's say we're a week away from a match. Our match just ended. Okay. Now the process starts about evaluating our opponent for the next match. And it's, right away, I got to get a match analysis done and given to Giovanni, and talk to the coaching staff. We'll have our meetings based on that report because they need to implement it in training, right? So it's not like you have a week to figure this thing out. It's like, no, you need to have something ready to go ASAP, and you can't even make it because teams change. They change formations. They change systems game to game. And so, if I watched a team 2 or 3 games ago, it might be a completely different team today.
Yeah.
Look at us, for example.
Yeah, you go watch us in May.
Yeah.
That's not the team you're going to play.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so my job starts right after the match, where I am now looking at the most recent matches of the opponent, figuring out, okay, how do they play? What styles they like to play? Who do they play in their lineups? And just putting it all together in I think it's like a 10 to 15 page doc, full of pictures, full of, circles and arrows and the tactical stuff.
Sure.
And it touches upon anything and everything that I can think of that'd be important, and anything and everything that the coaches have iterated to me that they want to see. From that point, usually done by, let's say, Monday evening, Tuesday-ish, because Tuesday usually, so Monday generally off day-ish.
Yeah.
Tuesday they'll watch tape, or they'll go back to the performance that they just had. And then Wednesday it's implementation of the strategy for the next team. And so generally speaking, that match analysis report is into Giovanni, into John, prior to Tuesday.
Yep.
And we're having our meetings on Tuesday. And one of the things that I really enjoy doing, and I think it's something that Antonio actually started, was really communicating with the coaching staff. And so the open lines of communication with him started with, and have continued with Giovanni, is amazing. Yeah. The fact that we can go through the X's and O's, the fact that, they really value the opinions, and they really value, what I can bring from a scouting standpoint. The fact that we can bounce ideas off each other. I think that's the way to go. And I think that's, hopefully been able to translate onto the field, and especially as of late, I think it has.
Yeah, it's the same thing we were talking about earlier with your and John's relationship on the scouting side of things. You just need differing opinions. You need a healthy level of disagreement. At the end of the day, Gio, or whoever the head coach is, has to make the final call.
Yep.
And they have to make the final decisions and live with those final decisions. But introducing an environment where, okay, here's what I'm thinking, push back on me. What am I not thinking of? Give me something, okay, then I'll go away and I'll make my decision, make the best decision that I can. So that's really fascinating. Last thing on your job is obviously also evaluating our own players ahead of contract decisions and all that kind of stuff. So no need to dive into specific players or anything, but obviously you're always in this ongoing process of evaluating the performance of your own players. Should John open contract negotiations with X player or X player to get an extension? Are we okay with this player testing free agency at the end of the year? Who do we want to bring back? Who do we not? Are those conversations ongoing throughout the season? Do they heat up as the end of the season approaches? What does that look like?
Yeah, I think one of the things that in that light is very easy to do is to make decisions that are irrational after a performance or two in a game. Oh my gosh, this player is the greatest thing ever. We need to sign them for the rest of their career. Right. And oh my God, this player is terrible. These are the things that lead you to making bad decisions. So the thing with us, John and I, is that we will evaluate over, let's say, thirds, half time, half of the season, we'll go over, okay, who's been playing, who hasn't been playing, who do we need to see more out of, who are we happy with, where do we go from here? And then as we get closer and closer to the end of the season, we always have that ongoing conversation. Another thing we also have to have ongoing at all times is that, okay, what if someone picks up the phone and calls us and say, hey, we want to buy X from you for this amount of money? We've got to be able to figure out, okay, can we sell them? Can we not? Do we have a replacement in-house? Do we have to go and get somebody? All of these things are just always going on. And so this is what I said a few minutes ago, that it's a dialogue that we have every day. It's because every day there's little things. And so it's an ongoing process. Right. And so to tell you that, we have our plans for, the next 5 years laid out, impossible.
Absolutely impossible. There's no way to predict. If I'd had you on the pod July 4th, 2024, and told you that Johnny Rodriguez would be a Las Vegas Lights player come January 2025, you would have been like,
that would be a big hug.
Yeah, you'd be like, great, sounds good, but how are you getting him out of that contract? It's like, because he then went and signed a new contract with Oakland in the fall, and that seems like, okay, there's no way we're getting him out of there right now. And then stuff can change overnight, and a player becomes available, or someone puts in a great offer for one of your players that you were really happy with, but maybe it's the right price. It's always an ongoing, interesting conversation that I think people don't see, right? And I think that's why it's important to have you on the pod and try to give our fans and whoever's listening to this sort of a window into how this stuff works. I think sometimes from the outside looking in, you don't see those conversations that happen day to day as a fan. All you see is the end of year contract decisions come out, and we're like, but I love that player. Why are we letting him walk? It's not just like you walked into John's office on November 1st, 2025 and go, all right, we haven't talked about this all year, but I don't know, what should we do with this guy? Like, that's not how it works. No. Exactly. Yeah. You have a plan in place. You've evaluated them all year. All of that kind of stuff. Just like you would as an employee at any organization. 100%. You have a mid-season review to check in on your goals that you set, an end-of-year review, all of those kinds of things. So I find it really, really interesting. Really quickly, I think to kind of wrap us up as we get to the end here, I have an interesting question for you. I'm just interested to see how you would approach this. You can get one player in the world for the Lights on a 3-year contract. Salary doesn't matter. Transfer fee doesn't matter. Who are you going to get? Just assuming that like whoever you get would be like willing to play, willing to come to the USL Championship. Who would you add to this roster?
We have all of those players on our squad already. Yeah. So there wouldn't be anybody else that I would go out and specifically get. That's the technical answer.
Yeah.
Honestly,
like who in the world right now is like really impressing you? You know, like what's a player that's out there you're like, wow, that player really impresses me? Because Messi, obviously, sure, like best player in the world, whatever. We'll go get Cristiano Ronaldo. We'll go get Lamine Yamal, sure. Like, but who's out there that's like, man, I've really been impressed with him lately. He's putting in incredible performances.
So here's a little bit of confession time. I don't watch a lot of soccer at that highest level.
Yeah, I mean, because you're spending all your time watching soccer at our level.
So I feel guilty.
Interesting.
So if I'm throwing on, like, okay, I'll watch a Champions League final, right? But if I find myself watching, a midweek Premier League game or a Serie A game or something like that, a little part of me is like, you could be watching USL. You could be scouting players. You're missing out.
I could be watching the Danish second division right now.
Seriously, no. And like, there's always that, like, is this like, are any of these players realistically coming to the Las Vegas Lights? Yeah. And if not, is there a better use of your time? And so I honestly find myself not watching those games.
It's interesting for me too. I feel like since working in professional soccer, I have watched less and less and less, just because I live and breathe soccer every day. I'm talking soccer on this podcast. I'm watching our games every single weekend. So sometimes the last thing I want to do on my day off is like fire up the Premier League at 7 a.m. and watch another soccer game. Like, I just need to kind of unplug from the soccer world sometimes, because it can be a lot.
Fair enough. I respectfully disagree in my opinion. I got to be watching more, but I got to be watching relevant. Relevant, more games. If there's a game on, I'll watch USL games that have already played, right? And so I'll jump on Y-Scout. I'll find a game, cast it to my TV. I'll put it on. Okay, let's watch. It happened a week ago, but I'd rather watch this than watch, Toronto FC.
Yeah.
Right, which I will watch time to time because there are potential players that we could maybe loan in. MLS is part of the North American pyramid, and so there is the ability to work
maybe
with.
If they're playing in the Open Cup, okay, they're playing some younger kids. Let's take a look. Like, this is relevant to us. Yeah.
Right, but I would hate for Johnny to ask me, hey, there's this guy available. What are your thoughts? I want to be able to say something right away.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so
fascinating.
Yeah.
So
I
think that's the mentality you have to have as a scout, though. Like, that's just the mentality you have to have as a scouting world. You just have to be ready to grind games.
100%.
Yeah. And I think that's not the sexiest thing in the world, is like, everyone's like, oh my gosh, Steve watches soccer for a living. Like, what a dream. But like, at the end of the day, I mean, you are grinding Y-Scout games, just watching soccer till your eyes bleed, and after a while that can become pretty tedious.
I wouldn't change a thing,
and
I'd watch more.
And that's why you're here to have this conversation with me right now. I want to ask quickly, kind of your journey to here.
Yep.
You've referenced a little bit your and John's relationship, and so I want to provide some clarity to that. When did you and John first meet, and sort of like what's that relationship been like over time to where we are now?
So we actually both worked together back in baseball, back with the Toronto Blue Jays. Worked with each other for quite a long time. It was really interesting while working with him there. We were playing GM scout, if you will, whilst in the baseball world. Not just for baseball, we always had our eyes on soccer.
Yeah.
And so it was one of those things where I remember having conversations with him like, we both bond over the Italian national team.
Yeah.
I know John's a big Juve fan, and so we're talking in terms of like, this player over here, I don't like him, I like him. Why don't you like him? Why do you like him? These types of things. I'm a big Canadian men's national team fan, and so I'm talking, and John's, I don't know if he'll ever, I think he would admit it. He's a Canada fan too, but he'll entertain my conversations with him on Canadian.
But if Canada and Italy are playing, he's cheering for Italy, obviously.
I think he's cheering for Italy.
Yeah.
So, someone like Dusan Vlahovic, okay? He's coming up with Fiorentina, and he's just cutting his teeth there. I'm like, I like this guy. I really like this guy, and John's like, oh, okay, interesting. I don't really know much about him. We'll start watching him. And then he goes to Juve. Now, he's on John's radar. And this is well before we're actually involved in soccer.
Right.
And so we're doing this already. And it's like, well, he's like, he goes out and he scores a brace. Well, I mean, I like him now too.
He
got a good eye for this. Like, whatever. We're just fans. It's nothing of it. But you start building that relationship back in baseball.
Yeah.
Enter Jose Batista, who obviously played with the Jays, and there was that relationship there as well. And so it's been awesome working with him again.
Yeah.
Obviously, great working with John, and hopefully.
Nice.
Hopefully keep going.
Yeah, because then you guys leave the Blue Jays and you go your separate ways. John obviously heads off to Italy to start his career and working in soccer proper, Venezia, all of his stops over there before coming back to the lights.
Yep.
You headed off to Canada soccer for a little bit. So talk to me about that experience with Canada.
So I was working in Canada with Canada Soccer. I believe it was for 2 camps. And I was with the equipment staff. So I'm on the bench and I'm taking it all in from that perspective. And the funny story that I've referenced earlier.
Oh yeah, sure.
And so when it comes to making subs, I learned very, very early the dangers of making substitutions. So, and this, luckily the game was in Bermuda. They have terrible Wi-Fi, terrible internet there, and so it didn't get broadcasted.
Okay.
But we're in a scenario where I'm talking to the kit man, and I'm basically saying, hey, like, why don't we bring extra jerseys out there? Why don't we bring an extra keeper kit out there? What happens if something happens and we need to put a keeper in, an extra keeper with an extra kit? And he's like, oh, it's never happened, right?
Knock on wood.
Knock on wood. So we decide to obviously keep the keeper kit in the locker room.
Yeah.
We're in Bermuda, and the coaching staff said, okay, we're gonna just go in with 2 keepers. So we go in with 2 keepers, and the plan is to give them each a half.
Okay.
So we substitute our 1 keeper out for another.
Yeah, right.
Doesn't he go and get injured and need to get subbed out?
No.
And so I run into the locker room and say, hey, where's that extra goalie jersey? He's like, what are you saying? I'm like, no, we need an extra goalie jersey. A player's going to go in net.
Yeah.
And so that's one of those situations where, like, okay, we could have made an extra sub, but we didn't have the personnel.
Yeah.
And so
there wasn't a third goalkeeper on the bench.
There wasn't a third goalkeeper on the bench.
Yeah.
If we bring the first half goalkeeper in, it negates the result. The result.
Yeah.
And so we ended up having to put an outfield player in the net. Now, luckily, again, wasn't really covered much. It was a friendly, bad internet connection, so it wasn't, it was something that only the team would have experienced.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's a scenario. Adam Straith.
Okay. How did he do?
Pretty good.
Okay. Yeah. Did you concede a goal?
I don't think so.
Oh, there you go.
No, I think he had a couple saves. The running joke was, this would have been over a decade ago, where I grew up playing as keeper, and they've said that in meaningless games they've put guys on the roster just for like memory.
This is kind of like that, like in the NHL, like when like the random guys, like the emergency third goalkeeper, and then you see him go in and win a game, and it's a whole thing. Yeah, look that up if you don't know what I'm talking about. Just look it up. It's incredible.
The third, like the and so they were just like, man, if we would have known, we would have thrown your name on the roster. And we probably would have used you. Which it was wild because I remember taking shots against these guys in training the day before, and just like I remember Marcel de Jong just whizzing these things by me. I'm like, okay, I'm not stopping that.
No chance.
Yeah, no shot.
Oh my gosh, amazing. So then we covered, right? Like then you're sitting around and you get a call from John, and it's like, all right, we're jumping into this project. Let's go.
So I was in the background when he was at Venezia.
Okay. Cool.
I wasn't working for the club, but I was always in contact with John. Time difference, obviously.
Crazy.
But we made it work. We would talk. He would say, okay, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. He basically throughout his whole journey, right? His whole journey in terms of the fact that, there's an opportunity to intern at Venezia to the point where he ends up working his way up to, assistant sporting director. That whole process, I'm right there on the phone with him. And a lot of things like, I don't know if a lot of people know this about him, but he came in when Venezia was going to be relegated. Like they were in the relegation zone.
From Serie B.
From Serie B to Serie C. Right? And so he comes in, and then he, not only does he save them, he then goes on, he moves up in the organization, he puts together a team, obviously with the staff there, and they make some coaching changes, and he ends up putting together a team that he then leaves to run the lights. That squad that he put together ends up going off and getting promoted to Serie A. Right? So that's one of the things that I think
missed out on the glory of Serie A. Huh?
No, I think he got that because he put it together. He saw his project go all the way through, and I think that's something that a lot of people don't really know. But that's something that, again, on the inner circle, wow, like that's pretty cool.
Yeah, that is pretty cool. Just getting a squad promoted like that, like there's really nothing like it. Which is a good shout to promotion relegation coming to USL. There you go. Towing the company line, Steve. We love it. I always ask this for people kind of as we wrap up. We didn't talk as much about your journey as I do with some of the players that come on, but looking back on your journey, was there one step or one stop on that journey that you think was really pivotal to where you are now?
I would say that's a tough one. I would say the ability to answer the call when the call is made. So not necessarily one specific journey or one specific event, one specific time of working somewhere. But it would be when given an opportunity to seize it. Right? If somebody calls you, I mean, this is something that, goes back to when I was in high school, the opportunity to work with a professional organization. I'll figure out the rest. Oh, you're going to pay me for this? Fantastic. I'd have done it for free type thing, right? But I just want to get in. Opportunity to work with Canada Soccer. Oh my gosh, I've been following these guys all my life. Absolutely. Opportunity to run a soccer program, which I do back home in Toronto, north of Toronto. Absolutely, I'm in. Like, the fact that I remember walking into a school saying, okay, like who do I have to get this team off of? And they said, you want it, it's yours. And building it from there. So all these little opportunities to the point where, Johnny picks up the phone and he says, hey, Vegas, you in? Yeah.
Sure.
Right? Hey, there's an opportunity on the bench. You in? Yeah. I think you have to take opportunities in your life. And I think that's something that I've been fortunate enough that I've been able to, first off, get those opportunities, and second enough, I've been able to make those take those opportunities.
Fascinating. And finally, again, a reminder, we're recording this on the morning of July 4th. So heading off to take on Sacramento tonight. Gold Cup final on Sunday. Have you been watching much of the Gold Cup or no?
I stopped watching after a certain game went to penalties.
Tough. Sorry to bring that back up.
Yeah.
A prediction for U.S. Mexico on Sunday? Let's see if this ages well or not.
Oh, U.S.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean,
is that a heart decision or a head decision?
No, I'm in the U.S. right now.
Sure.
And you're wearing the jersey. So, U.S.
Okay, give me a score prediction. Let's see if you can nail it, and let's see if it lands.
Final, Mexico, probably heated. It is U.S.-Mexico, yeah?
It's U.S.-Mexico, yeah.
It's going to be heated. Let's go with 2-1.
Okay. I'll go 1-1 U.S. on pins.
Sure.
1-1 U.S. on pins, which would be incredible. Not good for my sanity or my heart, but it would be incredible. So hoping my boy Patrick can score the goal. So we'll see how it goes. Steve, thanks for coming on the pod today. Best of luck tonight against Sacramento. Hopefully in the future we can have you back on. But really enjoyed this conversation, and good luck tonight.
Likewise, really appreciate this.
Yeah. All right, guys, that'll wrap us up. We'll be back next week to wrap up this Sacramento game and go from there with a brand new guest. So we'll see you next time. Thanks.